Here is a plan to protect God's children. One child who has experienced child abuse is one too many.
I ask myself what I could have or what I should have done differently. I want to help others learn from what we experience. That no matter how much you think you know a person, this could happen within any community.
In a plan to protect God's children, you will learn 5 important steps to follow that will teach you to become the eyes, ears, and voice of our children and young people in protecting them from child sexual abuse. These 5 steps are: 1. Know the warning signs. 2. Control access. 3. Monitor and teach internet safety. 4. Be aware of child and youth behavior. 5. Communicate your concerns. Step 1 is know the warning signs. Have you ever witnessed an interaction between an adult and child or young person that did not feel right and gave you an uneasy feeling, but weren't quite sure of what was bothering you? There is an important tool you can use to ensure that your behavior is appropriate. The tool is PAN, an acronym that helps you to ask 3 important questions. Is the behavior public, appropriate, and non-sexual in nature?
You know, looking back on it, there were several warning signs. My teacher would keep me, only me, after school. She was overly physical and always touching me. Where were all the teachers? I started to hate going to English class, started skipping, and I would complain about her at home. Why wasn't anyone watching what was going on?
Keep your eyes open for concerning behavior. For example, you may notice an adult who always wants to be alone with children or young people more than with adults. Once a child sexual abuser gains their trust, they may then isolate the child or young person so that their sexual behaviors with them cannot be observed. This could also be part of the grooming process, to help their victim become comfortable being alone with them before the actual sexual abuse takes place. Or you may notice a person who goes overboard in touching children and always wanting to wrestle or tickle them. Even if these touches are not meant to be sexual in nature, they may be inappropriate and part of a grooming process to get a child to accept unwanted touches and must be addressed. In the past, it was taught that private body parts were identified as those parts of the body covered by the bathing suit. Today, we teach total body safety, which helps adults, children, and young people to understand that their entire body is private and belongs to them, and that any unwanted touch to the mouth, face, arms, thighs, or any part of the body is unacceptable.
I don't know how or when it started, but when I look back on it, he was always trying to sit real close to me and touch me all the time. I told him I didn't like to be touched in that way. I told him stop. He said I needed to trust him, that this is what I needed to do if I was serious about being captain, or wanted a college scholarship recommendation from him. Then he told me I'd better keep this our little secret.
There are also non-touching behaviors that can be part of the grooming process. Be conscious of an adult who gives a child gifts or special experiences without parental permission. They may even ignore parents' wishes. They may also manipulate a young person with promises that can affect their self-esteem or even their future.
Thinking back, there were several warning signs that other adults should have noticed. He always wanted to be alone with me. He discouraged other adults from getting involved. Sometimes he would give me gifts or take me to special events, and he never asked for my parents' permission. He always told me to keep everything a secret.
Another red flag is when the adult starts talking about sex, or telling dirty jokes, or showing pornographic pictures to the child. The molester is testing the child and making the child feel complicit. If the child doesn't back off at that point, then the molester moves on to the next step.
He would leave dirty magazines out for me to look at. I knew it was wrong. But I thought it was kind of cool that, he was letting me do adult stuff.
By knowing the warning signs and paying attention to our behavior and the behavior of others, we act as role models. Thus, we further ensure the protection of children and young people in our parishes, schools, homes, and communities. Keep in mind, if adults are exhibiting problematic or inappropriate behavior, it does not necessarily mean that they are abusing a child or young person. They could simply have a poor understanding of boundaries or may not be aware of the rules. However, it could be grooming. In either case, these behaviors must be addressed. Step 2 is control access. The first way that parishes and schools must control who has access to children and young people is by having a proactive screening process for all employees and volunteers. This will help to determine if an applicant is suitable to be around children and young people. The screening process must be completed prior to employment of new staff or assignment of new volunteers. Any adult who wants to work or volunteer with children or young people must complete and sign a standard application that includes the applicant's previous employers and personal references, including full names and current phone numbers.
When it was finally over, it turned out that my teacher was fired at her last job because of a student's complaint about the very same thing. If someone would have checked this, it never would have happened to me.
Once the application process is completed, a face-to-face interview is essential to determine the suitability of the applicant to interact safely with children or young people. A criminal background check is a priority for any adult who will be working or volunteering directly with children or young people. People who have a criminal history that includes sexual offenses have been known to sign a background check authorization, believing they can slip through the cracks.
I've done Santa Claus appearances. I've coached girls softball, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. I've taken them to national tournaments, coached softball for 15 years. These things were so easy for me to get into because nobody ever questioned it. Nobody ever checked my background.
Beyond the screening process, it is critical that we create a safe environment by requiring every adult who is working or volunteering in a parish or school in any capacity to be educated and informed by attending the Virtus Protecting God's Children adult awareness training, reviewing, signing, and following the Diocesan Code of Conduct, and knowing the safe environment policies and procedures for your parish or school. These documents describe behavioral expectations of adults interacting with minors in clear, objective language and provide a basis for raising concerns. For example, adults should never meet alone with children or young people. They should only meet them in areas where other adults can see them, or an adult could walk in unannounced. There must also be adequate adult supervision of children and young people participating in parish and school events or activities, such as field trips and youth retreats. It is equally important that when children or young people are dismissed from religious education classes, sports events, or other activities, the adult in charge should never be left alone. There must be at least 2 adults present until the last child is picked up.
Can I help you with something?
Yeah, I'm here to pick up my niece.
Well, you need to go into the office and sign in.
Parishes and schools must further control who has access by ensuring that the physical environment is safe for our children and young people. A check-in system for parents, vendors, or others who are visiting in areas where children and young people are present must be in place and enforced to ensure that no one can gain access to these areas without the permission. Adults also need to be aware of secluded areas in and around school and church buildings where a child could be taken alone. Those areas need to be made off-limits. That means locking doors to rooms that are not being used and routinely checking places where children can be taken alone. Many parishes and schools have installed computerized locking systems and camera monitoring systems at entrances and around the school and parish facilities. By proactively controlling who has access to children and young people through screening, and by providing for a safe physical environment, we help to ensure and protect the safety of all God's children. When people understand that this is not about trusting them, but it is about protecting children, they'll understand that this is a necessary step. Step 3 is monitor and teach internet safety. While the internet provides almost limitless opportunities for learning, entertainment, and socializing, it can also open new dimensions of danger. Adults must be proactive in monitoring children and young people's internet activity while teaching them how to protect themselves when using the internet. Adults must also be role models in their own internet communication with children and young people.
The reality is there is nothing that's private on the internet. Absolutely nothing at all. A child molester can use a computer or a smartphone to roam online from gaming sites to social networking platforms looking for children and teens susceptible to victimization.
Exposing children and young people to the internet without any oversight could leave them vulnerable to victimization and sexual abuse by anyone, an online predator, or even by someone they know and trust. Here are some of the major areas of concern regarding technology. Cyberbullying is the repeated use of technology to make another person feel angry, sad, or scared. It can occur when the child is at home, as well as at school or anywhere with a device that has the internet. It can happen 24 hours a day and become relentless and invasive. Cyberbullying can cause physical, psychological, and social harm that destroys a child's self-esteem. Children and young people must be taught that bullying of any kind is never right and can be dangerous. Let them know that if bullying happens to them or someone they know, they should tell you or another safe adult immediately. Sexting is sending sexually explicit messages, photos, or videos via cell phone, computer, or any digital device.
Many adults and young people are unaware of the hidden dangers of some of the technology-related apps or unsafe internet sites, such as the many social networking, photo posting, or gaming sites. If teachers, parents, and other caring adults would go to these internet sites or download a handful of popular apps, they may be shocked by the content, photos, and the personal information that they would find.
It is important to share with children and young people that anything posted online can be there permanently and can become a viral phenomenon with grave consequences. If the image is of a minor, creating it, sharing it, or having it may even be a crime. Pornography is the portrayal of sexual subject matter or behavior intended to cause sexual arousal. Statistics show that the largest consumers of free internet pornography are children between the ages of 12 to 17. Using safety features such as restricted mode options, filters, privacy, and parental control settings can help monitor what a child or young person views. A regular check of all their devices and apps for online activity is also critical to ensure their safety. In addition, children and young people can be taught to turn off their cameras and audio and to shut down their devices when not in use, especially at night. Let them know if they see any image that makes them feel scared, uncomfortable, or confused, they should immediately tell you or another safe adult. The sexual trafficking of minors is the commercial sexual exploitation of children through buying, selling, or trading a child's sexual acts. The internet is being increasingly used as a tool to lure innocent victims. Children or young people must be taught never to provide any personal information such as their name, address, phone number, school name, email address, or other identifying information to a friend you only know through the internet. This could enable the friend to find or exploit them. Even apart from conversation, an innocently posted photo can also contain personal information in the background, in addition to tracking information embedded in the metadata of the photo, such as the actual GPS location of where the photo was taken. And let children and young people know they should never meet in person with a stranger they have only met online. If you suspect that a child or young person is being sexually exploited online, immediately contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Cyber Tip Line at www.cybertipline.org. You can also contact law enforcement. As we continually utilize technology-facilitated ministry and education, it is critical that all church and school employees and volunteers follow the diocesan social media and technology policies and guidelines, utilize technology, devices, applications, and platforms sanctioned by the diocese. Keep personal social media accounts separate and private.
The best security measure of all is to frequently and openly communicate with children and teens about the latest evolving technology. You should discuss the risks and benefits as well as the potential impact upon their lives.
Step 4 is be aware of child and youth behavior. Child sexual abusers and people with inappropriate boundaries are skilled in concealing and manipulating their in-person and online interactions with children and young people. Therefore, it is not always possible to observe or easily identify the problematic behavior of an abuser or a person with inappropriate boundaries. Children do not always verbally disclose what is happening to them or say what is troubling them. Often, the way they say something, or avoid saying something, or even their body language may be more informative than any statement they may make. Some examples of the types of behavior that might indicate danger to a child or young person are if they begin to spend unusual amounts of time alone, are secretive, become fearful, anxious, or uncomfortable around a certain person, lose interest in school, activities, and friends, exhibit noticeable changes in mood, grooming, sleeping, or eating habits, display age-inappropriate sexual behavior or knowledge, and use drugs or alcohol, or inflict self-injury.
Although these behavioral red flags don't necessarily mean that a child is being or has been abused, they are indicators that shouldn't be ignored. We must engage in regular, proactive conversations about sexual abuse, personal boundaries, and healthy relationships with the children in our lives. Rules about bodies should be just like any other safety rule, like putting on your seatbelt and looking both ways before you cross the street. These conversations must be had from birth through adulthood. Normalizing these conversations overcomes the message that is often conveyed to victims and survivors. They don't have to keep it a secret, and they don't have to keep their pain to themselves.
A child, or even an adult, might come to you with what they fear is their deepest, darkest, and most horrible secret related to the abuse that they may have experienced. Don't be afraid of that. Kids don't always disclose. I exhibited multiple red flags through my behavior and body language, and with the way that I said some things, and also in the way that I avoided saying some other things. I was desperate for people to know that something was wrong, that something was happening to me.
Many children will deny having been abused or will even recant after telling. They're afraid of being blamed. They're afraid of being contradicted by a more influential person. They're afraid of what their parents, family, and friends may say. The molester may have even convinced them that they were at fault. But patient, Non-judgmental listening will usually allow the story to come out.
I finally came out and told my parents about everything. At first, I was mad because I thought they were defending him. Then the next day, I found out they went to the school and told him. When everyone found out, it seemed like they were all mad at me, like I had done something wrong. Some people thought I was lying because I didn't make team captain. They were all judging me, blaming me. I think some thought it was my fault that it happened. I even began thinking it was my fault, like I caused all these problems. But when some of the other guys on the team said that coach had been doing the same things to them, people started to believe me.
It is important to let children and young people know that there are safe adults who will believe and help them if anything makes them feel uncomfortable, scared, or confused. They have the right to say no, get away, tell a safe adult. They should also be told that if abuse has occurred to them or a friend, that it is never their fault. For this reason, we must tell children and young people, do not be afraid, do not be ashamed, and do not be embarrassed. You can always speak out. You can always tell. Step 5 is communicate your concerns. The first level of concern involves the observation of inappropriate or possible grooming behavior that adults might exhibit. When an adult exhibits inappropriate or possible grooming behavior toward a child or young person, it must be communicated immediately to a supervisor or person in charge. Communicating your concerns about someone who might be exhibiting inappropriate behavior is not accusing them of being a child abuser. It simply draws attention to the behavior and gets the information to the best person who can do something about it. If the inappropriate behavior continues, communicate your concern a second time to the supervisor or person in charge, again, or report it directly to the pastor or principal or someone else at the diocese until you are satisfied that your concern has been adequately addressed. A child's life might depend on your persistence. In far too many cases of abuse, adults have observed inappropriate behavior but failed to speak up until it was too late.
After we found out our priest had molested our daughter, plenty of well-meaning people came forward and told us that they suspected something. My question is, why didn't they come forward sooner?
You don't need concrete proof of anything to express a concern or an observation. I often speak with other survivors of abuse, and a common question comes up. How many people in our childhoods noticed something along the way, but they didn't say anything?
The second level of concern is when you actually suspect that a child or young person is being or has been abused. This could be through your observation of the child's physical or emotional behavioral changes, or if the victim or another person disclosed the abuse directly to you. If you have a reasonable suspicion or knowledge that a child or young person is being abused, you have a moral and possible legal responsibility to report it immediately to Child Protective Services.
All states have laws that require professionals who work with children to report suspected child abuse. Many require everyone to report, not just confirmed cases, but even if they just have a suspicion. Some people find that hard because they're afraid they might be wrong or that they might alienate someone. But such courageous reports have rescued many victimized kids from terrible torment. You can even make such reports anonymously, and if you make the reports in good faith, you can't get into trouble.
The third and highest level of concern is if you become aware that a child or young person is in imminent danger of abuse. If the threat of harm is imminent, call 911 emergency services immediately. After contacting the appropriate Child Protective Services or law enforcement agency, if the suspected abuse involves a member of the clergy or a church or school employee or volunteer, you must notify a church official designated by your diocesan policy.
Communicating concerns can be a challenge, But we need to find the courage to speak up, and we must speak up. Kids depend upon it. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. But you know, this Virtus training is so much bigger than me and my personal experience. In fact, it's bigger than any of us. The goal here is to change the culture of silence to open discussion.
The plan to protect God's children requires that you follow each of the 5 steps. 1. Know the warning signs. 2. Control access. 3. Monitor and teach internet safety. 4. Be aware of child and youth behavior. 5. Communicate your concerns. We believe that through education, prayer, and working together as a Catholic community, we can create a safe environment that protects our children and young people from child sexual abuse. We are grateful for people like you who have given unselfishly of your time to complete this training, and in doing so, demonstrate a commitment in implementing these 5 steps of the Virtus Protecting God's Children program. Thank you.